What's up, YouTube? My name is Del. This is Del on Movies. Thanks for hanging out with me. If you've been here before, thanks for hanging out with me again. And this is going to be the first time that I talk about all the movies that I watched in the previous month. So January's over. We're into February, and I figured I'd share everything that I watched during the month of January. And for me, it was actually a bit of a slow month, and I needed a break after killing myself in December trying to make sure that I was able to finish out 2022 watching one movie a day for the entire year. I made it, but I'm not really trying to do that again this year. I'm just going to watch them as I watch them. If I get there, I get there, and if I don't, no big deal. So for the month of January, that means I watched about 16 movies, which is one every other day, and no problem with that either. That's cool. So the first movie that I watched for the new year was Avatar: The Way of Water. Went to the movies with my family to see that. They all wanted to see it, especially my wife. And she really had a good time, which is what counts. Me personally, not such a great time. The more I think about this movie, the less I like this movie. The story it's not really a strong story. It's really the first movie rehashed, and just with some kids thrown in, some teenagers thrown in, and it's stretched out way too long at over 3 hours. It's a movie that could have been less than 2 hours and accomplished the same exact thing. Zoe Saldana, who was the best part of the first movie, is kind of pushed off to the sidelines for most of this movie until the third act, where she kind of gets in on the action a little bit. Basically, I spent a lot of time bored and just not happy with the story again, because it just was pretty weak and stretched out. Just, it's ridiculous how long they stretched it out. 2 stars is what I wound up giving it on my Letterboxd account, which we'll be looking at a lot of during this video. You can follow me over there. Again, it's just Del on Movies. And next movie I watched is that night, actually, I came home and watched Terrifier 2. So with that one, I had a lot more fun with it, but again, the movie was just way too drawn out. 2.5 hours of this movie, where again, it should have been less than 2 hours. But what was there? There was a lot of it. There was a lot of gore in this movie, and if you're a gore hound, this is definitely the movie for you. I enjoyed that aspect of it, but the story just needed to be tightened and shortened, and we didn't need 2.5 hours. We could have got 1 hour and 45, had a really good time, and saved some of that for Terrifier 3. But as it is, they stretched it all out, and that drops it down a bit for me. 3 stars is what I'm going to give it. So 3 stars for me means I enjoyed it. I liked it. I just didn't love it. Next movie I watched, Roald Dahl's. It's hard saying that name sometimes. Roald Dahl's Matilda the Musical. So first, I got to start with a confession on this one, guys. I've never seen the original Matilda. Now, my daughters were both giving me a hard time on that because they used to watch it all the time, but I just never sat in the room and watched it with them. So this time I sat here and I watched this one without watching that one, and that was probably for the best, because I really enjoyed this one. They didn't care for it as much. They were pointing out all the differences and flaws that they saw with it compared to that first movie. I didn't have that frame of reference, so it didn't bother me as much. 3.5 stars for Matilda the Musical. Lashana Lynch was very good. The entire cast was very good. So Emma Stone made a fantastic villain, so I was really happy with that. The next movie I watched was something called Sharp Stick. Now, this movie is one that I didn't really care for at all. Is another movie I didn't care for. Lena Dunham directed the movie. She shows up in it. She's not the star of the movie, though. We got a girl who's living on the fringes of Hollywood, as the Letterboxd synopsis says. She lives out there with her mother and her sister. She starts having an affair with an older employer at her job, and then, as it says, she's thrust into an education on sexuality, loss, and power, and I was pretty much bored with it. So it's 2 stars for Sharp Stick. Not my cup of tea. Let me know if you've seen this one, and if maybe I'm off base here with that one. The next movie that I watched was Troll, and this is where things started looking up for me as far as the movies I was watching. Troll was a really good, not horror movie, but monster movie, or almost like a kaiju movie where trolls are gigantic and basically the side of the mountain is a troll. It's a really good one. I had a good time watching it. Story kept me on the edge of my seat all the way through. There was some parts that kind of dipped a bit for me, and all in all, it comes out to 3.5 stars for me. So yeah, I really liked it. It just wasn't great, wasn't quite great, but it was pretty good. The next movie I would say was great, and that is The Menu. If you've not heard about this movie already, which is pretty difficult because if you're a movie buff, because movie buffs everywhere are all talking about it, and it's got some Oscar nominations. It's just it's one of those movies that is definitely tense and can definitely be anxiety inducing, as we get some patrons at a exclusive posh restaurant finding out that the chef pretty much well, I'm not going to spoil it, but they don't like what he has in store for them. The Menu, 4 stars from me. If you want to see a great breakdown and analysis of this movie, check out Celeste La Cabra on his channel. He just goes through this movie completely, and I really enjoyed his video, so definitely check that out. I'll leave a link down to that one down in the description, and maybe I'll put a card up here if I can remember to do that. We'll see. The next movie is another one that I really enjoyed, and this was Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. I was really surprised by this one. I did enjoy the first one, so I wasn't surprised that I liked it. I just was surprised how much I liked it. I thought they did a really good job. Antonio Banderas, he really embodies the role, and him and Salma Hayek were just fantastic going back and forth in the movie. And it even had a great villain, a menacing villain for an animated movie, with the big bad wolf in there. So check out Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, especially if you like the first movie at all. Definitely check this one out. I really like this one, guys. 4 stars from me for that one. The next movie is It Happened One Night. And this one, Best Picture winner from 1934. So I picked this as part of Movie Swap, which I did my first episode with KB from KB Loves Movies. And this was the movie that he recommended for me to watch. And I did enjoy the movie. Had a good time watching it. It helped me out in a couple of ways. One, of course, give us something to talk about on Movie Swap. The other way is it knocked off another Best Picture winner that I hadn't seen before. I'm kind of making a goal. It's not a set in stone goal, but I do want to get through the end of the year and then having finished seeing all of the Best Picture winners. I've seen about half already, so I don't have to watch 90 or 100 of them, however many there are. But back to this movie in particular, I did enjoy it. Good, not quite great. I would go 3.5 stars on that. And if you do want to see more of my thoughts on that, definitely check out that Movie Swap with KB. And the movie he picked that I recommended for him was Mother. That's the next movie I watched. Bong Joon-ho directed that one. If you're not familiar with him, he directed Parasite, which won Best Picture a few years ago, and he's directed quite a bit of music movies. If you're a collector, Okja went into the Criterion Collection, so the Memories of Murder, both movies of his, and I really enjoyed this movie, and that's why I recommended it to KB to watch. 4 stars for me on Mother. Again, if you want to see deeper thoughts, check out that Movie Swap. The next movie I watched after that was Comic Book the Movie. So Comic Book the Movie is directed by none other than Luke Skywalker, or Mark Hamill as he's known in real life, and he also stars in the movie and plays a guy who is pretty big in the comic book world as I think a blogger, if I'm not mistaken. So much so that when his favorite character, there's a movie about to be made about his favorite character, the company that's making the movie hires him as an advisor, and a lot of butting heads goes on after that, and and it's a fun time. It's set at a Comic-Con, so we get a lot of celebrity cameos in the movie, including Stan Lee and Kevin Smith also. So definitely check out Comic Book the Movie. 3.5 stars for me if you're into that kind of deal. It's kind of it's a mockumentary movie. So if you're into that style at all, go ahead and definitely check out that one. The next movie after that I watched was R.I.P.D. 2, Rise of the Damned. My wife and I were looking for just something with some action one night, so we just picked this one. I had seen the original, she had not, so she had asked me if she needed to see that one first, and knowing that there's nobody from that movie in this one, at least nobody important, I told her no, so we just went ahead and watched it. She had a good time. It was okay as far as I was concerned. It definitely had some issues with the storytelling, but it had its moments. I'll go 2.5 stars for R.I.P.D. 2. Definitely nothing to write home about, but it wasn't terrible. The next movie I watched was another one for Movie Swap. This was for the second episode, which I did with Martinez Joe, and you can also check out the replay for that. I'll leave the links for all of those down below. And this movie was The Nightingale. This is the one that he recommended for me, and for me, this one I thought it was really well made, but I didn't enjoy it that much. It was well made, well acted. The story, the pacing is really good, so it's a 2+ hour movie. It goes by pretty quickly. My issues with the movie came in how it used some of its characters, particularly the tropes that it employs, and so that the ending felt kind of disingenuous to me. I didn't see enough for that character to do what he did. If I go into it a little bit more in my talk with Martinez Joe, so you can check that out. Even though I'll be honest, I might have undersold that aspect of it for me, even though I do bring it up several times. The next movie I watched, by the way, 3 stars for The Nightingale before I get to the next movie, which is House Party. So the original House Party, guys, is one of my all-time favorite movies. Definitely one of my all-time favorite hip-hop movies. It's just iconic. And a few years ago, I heard that LeBron James bought the rights to it. And, well, I was less than enthused to hear that news. But he has been doing a few, putting out a few good movies as a producer. So I wanted to give it a chance. And I gave it a chance, and I probably shouldn't have. It just was not good, not funny. The stories changed pretty drastically, and it's heavy on the product placement and thin on everything else. LeBron actually shows up towards the end of the movie, but yeah, I just didn't have a good time. A lot of jokes that just fell flat for me. I would imagine, though, if I had seen this at the same age that I saw the original House Party, I'd probably like it a lot better. So maybe I'm just an old man, yelling at the wind right now. But I'm only going 1.5 stars. It's for me the worst movie that I saw this month, and my love for the original again might have something to do with that. But so yeah, check it out on your own if you want to, give it a chance. It's still a movie that you could definitely look at and say, hey, Del, you're off your rocker. That was pretty good. But now for me, next movie was pretty good, I thought, and that is Megan. So my older daughter wanted to see this movie really bad, and usually it's my younger daughter that bugs me about going to see new movies or just watching movies in general, but my older daughter really wanted to see Megan, so her and I went out and saw it, and we had a good time with it. For me, it was held back by the PG-13 rating, and that's evident when on the screen, because it just feels like it's either cutting away when it shouldn't, or it's just not going full tilt. And there are stories circulating out there that the movie was originally supposed to be rated R, but then after the buzz they got from when the dance showed up on the internet, they decided to go PG-13, get more butts in seats. I don't know if that would work necessarily. If you leave it rated R and just go for it, you probably end up with a little bit better movie. What they ended up with was pretty good, though. It wasn't bad. So I go 3.5 stars on Megan. The next movie was You People, and this movie was it was not a good movie as far as I'm concerned. So with you people, let's go back a bit to the 60s. There was Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, and that was the Sidney Poitier movie that happened, where he's a black man, and he was getting ready to marry a young white woman, and he was going home with her to meet her parents, who had no idea he was black. And having it take place during the 60s, there was a lot more riding on that conversation than there are in that kind of movie today. For instance, it helped make Sidney Poitier a star, and it's just an all around really good movie. Cut to I guess 10-15 years ago now, maybe even more than that. I'll have to look it up, but there was a movie called Guess Who, which was basically a race reversal of that original movie. Guess Who starred Bernie Mac as the dad and Ashton Kutcher as the young man who was coming home to meet Bernie Mac and his family, because he was going to marry Bernie Mac's daughter, who was played by Zoe Saldana. So it was the white guy marrying into the black family this time. That movie had its moments, but it wasn't great. It was okay. It was just okay. This movie, You People, is really more closely aligned with that movie than it is with Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, even though it's part of the lineage. And this time it's Jonah Hill, so again a white guy marrying into a black family. He's marrying a young lady played by Lauren London, and her dad is Eddie Murphy, and that's where the fireworks come in with Eddie Murphy, and his mom is played by Julia Louis-Dreyfus, and his family's Jewish, Eddie Murphy, and that family is Muslim. So the problems with this movie for me: one, it was basically just cringe humor all the way through, just nothing, and it wasn't really that funny. Two, there wasn't much chemistry between Jonah Hill and Lauren London. Part of it is that Jonah Hill, in most movies I see, don't really have much chemistry with the female leads that he's had. It's a bit of an issue as far as making him the lead guy. And then on the other hand, Lauren London is not that strong an actress, so it just never quite came together. And then finally, the movie itself, it sets up that yes, Eddie Murphy's family is Muslim, Jonah Hill and his family, they're Jewish, but then it just kind of makes fun of both cultures without any depth or any sort of serious examination, whereas it kind of sets out like it's gonna do that, but it never really does, and it just kind of all gets to a point where to a predictable ending, and predictable from, before you even start the movie. If you just looked at the trailer, it's a predictable movie. Watched it anyway, hoping I might get something different. I didn't. Kenya Barris, if you are familiar with him, he directed the movie. He's the man behind Blackish and a lot of other projects. And here is, like I said, it's just full tilt, going directly to the destination where I knew it was going to get to. And it just wasn't really that funny in the process. So for me, You People got 2 stars. The next movie was One Night in Miami, and that's the other movie I watched in preparation for Movie Swap with Martinez Joe. I had seen this movie before, which is why I recommended it to him. 4 stars from me on that one. Again, check out that Movie Swap if you want to hear my deeper thoughts on that. And those are all the movies that I watched in January. So I am looking forward to all the movies I watch in February and doing this again. In the meantime, that's really all I have for you on this one. Like, comment, subscribe, and I'll catch you on the next one, guys. Bye.